Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays City Tips, where I review your cities and give you tips on how to improve them. It's an opportunity for the community to share ideas rather than just look at my builds, and it's a chance for you to get a City Planner City Score. What this isn't is an opportunity for negativity or roasting. Remember, I'm here to help, not poke fun or make anyone feel uncomfortable. This should be a relaxing experience where you get constructive feedback on how to improve your city. So today we are reviewing Debivort's city of Santa Luna, and Debivort is a patron, so thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. They've identified their skill level as intermediate, and they've created a really neat little city here that I'm excited to share with you. So they have provided a really detailed story for their build. Santa Luna is a region that's been inhabited since the Neolithic. The modern city of Santa Luna was first settled by Spanish speakers who were drawn to the sheltered deep water ports and mineral resources, particularly the sulfide minerals and gemstone peridot associated with the numerous volcanic areas. English-speaking migrants arrived in the late 19th century, and the city is currently demographically split between those of Anglo and Hispanic descent, with many bilingual speakers and blended families. A few regions of the original Spanish architecture remain, particularly in Old Tuyas, and several residences in Old Mill and Quay Town. So they go on to explain a little bit more about what makes this community interesting, and I'm dropping the full description of the city down in the comments as the pinned comment. Take a look. It's really neat. They've done a great job developing a backstory that has helped guide their build. Before we dive into reviewing the build, let's talk a little bit about how I score these cities. So I take a look at the map and I give a score based on your map selection. I look at the city layout and roadway configuration, the land use planning, the transit planning, your city services, the aesthetics of the city, and the unique features, and then I give you a City Planner City Score. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. Let's get right to it. So to start, let's take a look at the map. So this map might look familiar to you, and that's because it's one of the maps that comes with the base City Skylines game. This is Lagoon Shores. It's been out since the very beginning. So it's a neat map. This map has all resources available. So if we take a look, we can see that we have areas of oil, fertile lands, numerous forests, and old ore deposits. We also have a significant fishing opportunity in this area, and all methods of transportation are available here. This map is relatively flat, though. That's one of my critiques. If you're looking at just the normal building area, you know, there's not much terrain to look at. There's a hill here, a hill there, volcano here. Not much beyond that. There is a river here, and interestingly, so there's this crater lake here. This is supposed to drain over here, but the builder decided to change the orientation and use this right here as an opportunity to create a dam. So kind of neat. So I like what they've done here. They've taken a map that is, you know, pretty standard and done something special with it, but the map does have its limitations. I was going to give this a score, a little bit higher than Castelleta, which was what we first saw in episode 1. However, this is one of the kind of the starter maps, so I am going to give this a score of 2.5 out of 5. Next, we're going to take a look at the roadway configuration and city layout. So one of the things that I appreciate in this build is that, for the most part, roadway hierarchy has been preserved. There are a couple of caveats that we'll get to, but when we take a look at our traffic flow, it's very good. So part of that is that respecting of the roadway hierarchy, although I think that the roadway network is overbuilt in many areas. So if we look here, we see that there's this roundabout that has 6 lanes going through here, which is just kind of a lot. These inner lanes are never going to be utilized. And then we're going into an arterial here. This is 6 lane. And interestingly, you can get back in the highway. So this is probably one of the wonkier spots. I feel like they might have been trying to solve a traffic issue that they had in the past, and that's the way that they did it. But not a huge deal. I can overlook a couple of things like that. And for the most part, when you look at this, there is a logical progression. Some of the distances here, this is problematic in my estimation. If you were to have a backup here, it's backing up all over the place. Thankfully, they're not experiencing that, even with these massive roundabouts. But if we just overlook that, arterial, collector, local road. So we have that hierarchy followed. And even in places where they have deviated and they have these arterial roads, or at least what the game kind of approximates to be an arterial, they're almost functioning as collectors because of the amount of traffic through here. So like for this, for instance, I'm not 100% sure why this was upgraded to a 6-lane road. It's not really necessary. And with the roundabouts, it's not going to work as a 6-lane road. So this, in my mind, should be downgraded to a 4-lane road. So then we come to some interesting things. So let's go to our underground view. And I want to show you something that immediately jumped out to me. So first of all, there's an underground highway, and that's very expensive. So that's not something I would ever expect to see in a city of this size. There's 100,000 Sims, but that's expensive. Seattle's undergoing something like this right now, and it's been super expensive, super controversial, and it's not for areas that have land available to build highways. So and this is a place that has land available to build highways. So, and we've got it here. So this is interesting though. So over here we have a clover leaf, and it's made of arterials. Just the regular 6-lane arterial, and it's functioning okay. It's underground too, which makes it all the more interesting to me. So that said, I don't know that this kind of solution would ever work or ever occur in a million years, but they have it working. It's hard for me to get too cranky about it. So that said, I am going to dock a point for that, the underground roadway network. One thing I do like, through the story, you could tell that this has been developed in neighborhoods, and there are a number of neighborhoods, all custom named, lots of thought given to all of them. And the development patterns are unique to each of these neighborhoods, which is just outstanding. So you can see these neighborhoods being developed by individual developers. Like right here, you have a Crescent Park, and it has these lollipops coming off from these local collectors. Now there are some things happening here, like this road right here. This is a collector, or it would function as one at the very least, as would this. But we don't really have the ability to create that kind of road, at least not unless you have DLCs. You can kind of approximate it with that 2-lane wide collector, which I do have available here, so I can show you that. This right here, I think of as a local collector. So, in a city, you would have these, the road characteristics wouldn't necessarily change. So I guess I'm okay with what they're doing. But that said, the development pattern's the thing I'm more interested in. And you can see development patterns occurring by neighborhoods, which creates a sense of history. And that's just outstanding. That's something I haven't really seen in any of the other builds. And it's something that I really appreciate. To me, that breathes life into a build. So it's very, very neat. So one of the other things I noticed is that junction control in the city is pretty hit or miss. So let's take a look at this. So in many places, there's just no junction control at all. So I'm honestly pretty impressed that they're not seeing a bunch of backups from this, because I would anticipate, and right here there's junctions that aren't necessary. You could get rid of these and add some stop signs, but to have some of these junctions, like right here, with no control at all, just free flow, peds, cars, whatever, anything goes. That's a problem. I would expect that it would create more backups if it weren't for something else that I'll point out in the build in a little bit. So that's between some of the cheesing of the roadway infrastructure and the underground highways, and the stop control, that's the signalization, it's a little off. I'm gonna give this builder a score of 3.5 out of 5 for roadway configuration, and city layout. Next, we're going to review the land use planning of this city, and this builder did an outstanding job with their land use planning. So one thing I noticed right off the bat is that the mix of uses is very generous. So you'll see that they've gone one parcel at a time to develop some of these uses, create activity nodes, some streets of commercial activity, varying densities along those streets, mixing in residential densities, and trying to form, kind of corridors of activity, which is really excellent for transit. And you see that they've even created transit opportunities in these denser areas. And it's high quality, high capacity transit. So that is excellent. There are a couple of places where I think the transitions are a little bit rough, but it's not even that bad, because they're mixing in some of these higher density buildings with lower density buildings. It kind of all blends together. And then they've done some other things. They mentioned the tiny house community. This is neat. Just, trying to tell a story with the vanilla assets in this way is just really outstanding. And I've never seen anyone checkerboard like this. But what the effect is you have low density, high density, low density, high density. All of these kind of taller buildings alternating going down here. It's really neat. It's a way to make the game feel more varied when using vanilla assets. So excellent job with that. But I think one of the more impressive things is the way that they have managed to keep more noxious industrial uses away from residential uses, and then still have some less noxious, this right here is farmland, near the residential uses. So they've given that a lot of thought, and I think that is absolutely excellent. Even if the roadway network is overbuilt and cheesed a bit, it's still wonderful the way that they have mixed in these uses. Now, I would be completely remiss to not acknowledge something that is in this build that fundamentally changes the build, and that is the Eden project. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Right here. So we have the Eden project right in the middle of the city, and it's a beautiful asset, and it fundamentally changes your city. And the way that it does that is, number one, it boosts your land value to 100, which or higher, which is great if you want to level up every building in your city, but it certainly changes your land use planning. So you sometimes get a development pattern that maybe looks better than it would if the Eden project weren't present. The other thing it does is it eliminates pollution for all buildings that are built after the Eden project. So if we take a look, why don't we just take a look at our pollution levels? Very low. So there's a couple polluting uses, not many. If I were to delete these uses, let's just say I come through here. Oh, these are all historical. That is interesting. That one is. So if I were to come through here and delete some of these, when these redevelop, they should redevelop without any pollution. And for me, that's a problem. So that's the Eden project is one of those assets that for me personally takes the fun out of the game a little bit. So like in Verde Beach, for instance, it's probably the very last thing I'll place in the city, because the moment I place that, my city's basically done. I'm just doing that to see what it would look like with maxed out buildings as a kind of a utopian society. So that's a personal preference, but I do think it takes away from the realism. The other consideration here is noise. So they're mixing in the uses for the most part. It's pretty good, but we do, because of the Eden project, get a little bit of forgiveness. Right here, we have residential properties right next to this opera house, and they're totally fine. Maxed out level, not complaining, and this comes down to the Eden project. So we're able to get away with some of these issues that we wouldn't normally be able to because of the Eden project. So for me, that's a bit of a problem. Interestingly, I thought that it removed the pollution. It looks like these are still polluting, or maybe not. Maybe it's just polluted land. I don't know if there's a good way for me to test this, short of creating a new industrial area. I really want to, because this is something I thought was the case. and there's just not a lot of demand right now for industrial. We're going to leave this and we'll come back to it before the end of the build. So that said, with the Eden project and some of the issues that it creates, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 for land use planning. Generally the mix of uses is outstanding, but again, that little bit of cheesing of the game kind of breaks from the immersion for me a little bit, so I'm going to dock a point there. Next up is transit planning, and we've talked about how great the traffic flow is in this city, but it's not just, look at it's even gone up a little bit since we started. So it's not just that the roadway network has proper roadway hierarchy. For the most part, this is really a story of transit. So, and I think if the transit network weren't what it is, the traffic in the city could be an absolute disaster. But let's take a look. Wow. 9,500 trips per week from residents on transit and nearly 3,000 for tourists. That is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. So you might wonder, well, how do they do this? This is wild. We've got bus routes here, and granted, they've used custom assets. I have no problem with that. This one right here is one of the vanilla assets. So we only have 30 passengers that fit in this bus. Then we have this bus right here. You can get 110, that's fine. And then there's another bus. This one, I believe, allows, is it 110 for this one. They have one that allows 60 as well. Maybe it's this one? Yes. So they have a variety of assets. They've right-sized their buses to their lines, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's not just that. Let's zoom out and see why their lines work. So I think first and foremost, we just spoke about the land use planning, and their transit system is not trying to solve land use problems. Their transit system is trying to hit as many origins and destinations as it can. And that's easy because the land uses are mixed. So this is a real problem in the real world, is that you'll get a bus system and they are trying to serve way too many people that are way too far apart and take them to places that are way too far away. But if you have a nice mix of uses, you can pick someone up somewhere, drop them off at their destination, and at that destination have people getting on because it's their origin. And that's what's happening everywhere in this city, and it makes me so excited. But it's not just that. You see that these are logical routes that have opportunities to transfer. So right here, this bus route can transfer to this metro line. That's awesome. And there's 2 lines here. You can go in either direction. There are stops on either side of the road, so you could take this in either direction. And even here where it turns around, it's another transfer opportunity between 2 metro lines. So it's like this throughout their entire system, across all modes of transit. They've really heavily optimized all of their modes, and it shows. I mean, the amount of utilization here is just outstanding. All of the lines are logical. The entire city is blanketed with transit. I'm curious, I didn't look at this before. Our policies support it. So we've got the free public transit policy. So if your trip is easier by transit, more convenient by transit, faster by transit, why wouldn't you take transit, particularly if it's free? So that's what's happening here. And it's an easy thing to follow. And I'm just very impressed with the transit planning in this city. There's you might notice that there aren't trams here. I think that's because this is just a theory. I'm not 100% sure of this. I don't think that this builder had any DLCs at all. And the work that they've done without any DLCs is top notch. They're just using assets from the Steam workshop. When you look at this, you'll see that they've worked in a couple of assets here or there. There are just little things, but with transit, I mean, they don't have trams. They're not working with some of the modes that people traditionally use. They've still created an excellent network. So I guess I would advise that everyone keeps that in mind. You don't need every method of transit, and some methods maybe aren't as effective as you might believe that they are. you could do really well with what comes with the base game. So for transit, how can I give anything less than a 5 out of 5? This is outstanding. This is one of the more effective transit networks I've seen in the game. It's certainly the most effective of all of the cities that I've reviewed. So again, 5 out of 5. Excellent, excellent, excellent work. So next, we're going to take a look at city services. So this is everything from power and water to education, police coverage, and everything. So let's start out looking at power. And what you can see is we're kind of on the edge here. This is a bit scary in my opinion. This is way too close for comfort. And part of this is that the game has been running for a little bit. But part of this is just that there's not a buffer here. So we would need more of a buffer to feel comfortable. The city's not going to grow anymore because of the electricity coverage. So it's a bit of a problem. That said, when we take a look at our electricity coverage, they've done some interesting things. First, they've really spread apart their network. So if they were to pick up natural disasters DLC, it's very unlikely that their entire power network could be knocked offline at once. Now that said, because they're not overproducing, and we see the longer we sit here, the closer this gets to being a problem. But because their network is spread out, it's very unlikely that things break. Now, I'm seeing this. This is interesting to me. I'm curious about this. Better underground power lines. It's interesting. So they're using those underground power lines to make some key connections, which is also very nice. Looking at the water network, this chef's kiss. I love this. Do you notice where all their water pipes are? They're in the right spot, and the network is beautiful. So this is one of the things that I don't understand about not putting water pipes under the roads, is the networks are so beautiful when you look at them. Maybe I have a different criteria for beauty. But I think this is absolutely outstanding. This is a work of art in and of itself, and I absolutely adore it. They've done an excellent job here, and I want to give my hats off to them for that. Let's take a look at some of our other city services. So again, our garbage processing status here, I appreciate that it is well spread out. It is kind of teetering on the brink there. So there are two ways to look at that with both the garbage and the power. They're not overbuilding. They're building what they need when they need it. The other way to look at it is they have lots of money, so why not overproduce a little bit to give yourself some overhead? This all comes back to the Eden Project again. I'm going to talk about that a couple of different times. The Eden Project levels everything up, so the needs on your infrastructure are going to be greater. So you have to have that buffer if you're going to have the Eden Project. Healthcare, we're doing very good with healthcare, with death care, with child care, which, wow, 94%. Elder care, very, very good still. Now, where things get dicey, we take a look at our fire safety. This is not so good. And this is something where we have these dense areas that don't have fire coverage. That's problematic. And it seems like it's mostly the dense areas. There's some of these areas that just lack all fire coverage altogether. Police coverage, though, is one of the worst that I've seen in a build that I've reviewed so far. And granted, small sample size, but 8% is pretty high, and we're teetering on the edge. And for a city this size, that would be pretty scary. It'd make this kind of a scary place to live from a crime perspective. So that's certainly something that I take a bit of issue with. And I noticed that we have these over here. Let's test my theory real quick. I was wrong. This is still producing pollution, so skip that theory of mine. But back to this. The last couple things, we've got our education pipeline. Same story. We're teetering here. We're below on high school. We're doing great with our university coverage. I want to key in on this because this, to me, is one of the more unique things about this build. So look at this. So this builder has gone out of their way to create a unique college campus. So they've taken some mods or some assets from the workshop and created this building. So these are dorm buildings that work as college buildings. And then when we take a look, so that's really what's providing the coverage there. I have no problem with that. It looks very neat. And then we have this telescope dish doing the same thing. Probably not the greatest location for the telescope. I know that from experience and all the comments I saw on Verde Beach. But I love they've picked up targeted assets to create their own little campus here. Very neat. Very nice. So for city services, I do think that I've got to dock a few points here. They're not responding to the Eden project. So if you're going to place the Eden project, you've got to respond to it and provide that extra overhead in your coverage. And the police coverage, like I mentioned, is very poor in this city. So that's a bit of a problem. The one shining place that I really think they did a good job with is parks. We're going to dive into that. There's a lot of custom parks here, but the coverage, it blankets the entire city, which is outstanding. So for city services, I am going to give them a 3.5 out of 5. This is primarily due to not responding to the Eden project in terms of providing that school overhead, and docking a point for half a point for the fire and police coverage, which are lacking in some of the more important parts of the city. So next, we're going to review unique features, and this city is so filled with unique features. It is mind-blowing. Like I mentioned, there are no DLCs in this build that I could figure out or find. Yet here we have this amazing airport. We've got this lovely train station right here. This is outstanding. There's no other way to put this. This is some top-notch work right here. So we've got what basically is the Metropolitan Airport that you get in the DLC pack, but like times 1,000. And they've used airport roads to create all of these airport roads. It's a logical, functional airport in a part of the city that makes sense. The density around it is appropriate. They have gone ahead. They've done everything from create concourses to airport hangars, to air traffic control. So much detail into this. I don't know if they work at an airline or if they're just very familiar with the way airlines work. Fuel tanks, just wow. The amount of detail here, just every corner of this airport, it's all there. But this is just one part of the build that's like this. It's like this all over the place. So another part of the build that I am just in love with, they do not have park life, but that's not an excuse in their mind to not build parks. So check this out. They've got this custom entryway into their park. They built a parking lot to accommodate all of the tourists. And they've got water slides and a stadium and a kiddie pool and a roller coaster. And they've got a Ferris wheel. They've got this cinema here, go-karts. This is top notch. A skate park, amphitheater. That is the same amphitheater I used in Clearwater County. And they've used it very, very well. I know that this is a challenging asset to use. So, just incredible work. One of my favorite parts of this build, they built this golf course, and it just feels so good. They've got little pools of water. They've got these really nice greens, sand traps that look excellent. They've even got a fountain here. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this build. Just wow. Every part of this has detail, from the trees that they're using to the buildings that they're using. They have this, and look at this. I click on this, and this to me looks like King Leno's mansion that I actually used in Clearwater County, but they're using it as the Bellwater Golf Club. And they've got a little clubhouse here where, people could lounge, hang out by the pool, a little putting green. Just wow. This is awesome. Just so this part of the build, there are so many little details like this throughout the entire build. It is outstanding. So Again, the one place that I have a critique is the use of the Eden Project. The Eden Project, coupled with all of these unique assets, means that we just have a lot of unique assets in this build. So this is very utopian in nature. So I as you go through the downtown here, you just start to see that many of the buildings that actually come with the game, we can just go through here and kind of identify. There are many that are actually present in this build. Some of them used really well, some of them just kind of present. So that's the one critique that I would say that I have, is that there are just, in my opinion, far too many of these assets for a city of this size. Some of them are used really well. Some of them are just kind of here. I really like what they've done here with their government complex. It kind of gives me Salt Lake City vibes, where you got this church right in the center, government buildings not too far away. It's a really neat thing. So I'm not going to dock very much for that. I'm going to dock a half a point for the overusing of the unique buildings for a city this size and the kind of utopian nature of it. But that's what their dream is. I'm all for it. So for unique features, 4.5 out of 5. And then finally, aesthetics. And I think that if I went 4.5 for unique features, you know where I'm going with aesthetics. They've done such an excellent job here to not have Park Life DLC and detail parks. So check this out. This is one of their state parks. They have created this park here. There's a path to get in. You can walk around here. They've done an excellent job with their landscaping. They've provided opportunities like this all over. You can see it when you look at their districts. Right here is a park. Here's another park. This is the state park that they referenced in their story. They didn't have to do this, but they did. They have a restroom here, a little gazebo to take a look at the water, and a trailhead so you could walk up and take a look at this. Even get across the road and get to these neighborhoods or get around here. And there's a network of parks like this, and they're all very attractive. But for me, it comes back to some of those unique features that they have in here and the amount of care that they've placed into all of their neighborhoods, making sure that they're well landscaped. Nothing feels like it was just plopped there randomly. Everything has a purpose. Everything, there's an attention to detail here that even when maybe they're emulating a design pattern that's less than ideal, there's a purpose for it. They're telling a story, and they're trying to improve those designs through their aesthetics and through some of the things that they're doing here. Like right here, we're lacking some connectivity, but they have a connection to a pedestrian path. They've generously landscaped that, worked in a vanilla park to bring it all together, and just created a unique place. These are the types of places that make urban areas interesting. It's the fact that you have things that are different around every corner, around every block. It was one of the reasons that I love living in Los Angeles, for instance. As much of a hard time as I give Los Angeles, there was a while there, about a year, that every weekend I made it my mission to visit a different neighborhood and experience something inexpensive because I had no money. So that was a goal of mine, and that was something that was really easy to do there because every neighborhood was a little bit different. And that's one of the experiences you get in an urban environment. So they have done an excellent job of recreating that in their city here. And because of that, I'm going to give them a score of 5 out of 5. Incredible detail. I wish I was better at this. I've said that before. This is the sort of thing that I need to get better at. But they are absolutely masters at it. And what is this? Wow. Even managed to make this seem like an active volcano. Wow. That's the detail that I'm talking about. 5 out of 5 for aesthetics. So with that, there's only one more thing to do, and that is to award them a City Planner City score. And drum roll, please. They get a score 28 out of 35, making this the top rated city so far. I think that this builder has really done a lot of excellent things. The compensation for not having DLCs, the creativity, and it's just outstanding. They've done a really great job here. To improve this build, the number one thing I would do is just eliminate all of the cheese. You don't need it. You're doing so well in some other areas that the cheesing of the roadway network, it's not necessary. You can get away with just making those connections. It's going to function appropriately. If I went through here and removed that entire underground network, made the connections at grade, I think that you're still going to see a 80, 82, 83% traffic flow, especially if you downgrade some of those roads. Put this whole city on a road diet and get rid of the 6-lane roads. You don't need them. This was a really fun build for me to take a look at. And this was a really fun week to take a look at the 3 builds I took a look at. I hope that you enjoyed this. I'm going to leave you with a brief city tour, but if you could, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you aren't, and have an interest in doing so. Let's see them out with a brief city tour. Take care. Bye-bye.